The wedding cake was still in the kitchen when I found her in my father's study, sitting cross-legged on the Persian rug with a half-empty bottle of bourbon beside her white silk dress. Sophia Martinez looked nothing like the radiant bride who was supposed to marry my brother 3 hours ago. "You shouldn't be here," I said, closing the door behind me. She didn't look up from the photograph she was holding, one of Nathaniel and me at last year's company retreat. "Neither should you, Jake. Shouldn't you be comforting the groom?" I loosened my tie, the same charcoal gray that matched Nathaniel's abandoned tuxedo upstairs. He locked himself in his room. "Won't talk to anyone." "Smart man." She finally raised her head, mascara streaked down her cheeks like war paint. Unlike his brother, who apparently can't take a hint. There was something different about her voice, sharper, more deliberate than the soft-spoken woman who'd been planning centerpieces and seating charts for months. I'd always suspected there was steel beneath that porcelain exterior, but I'd never seen it until now. "Why did you do it?" I asked, settling into the leather chair across from her. "Everyone's calling it cold feet, but we both know better." Sophia took a long pull from the bottle, wincing as the bourbon burned. "Do we? You've been planning this wedding for 8 months. You knew the guest list by heart, had 3 dress fittings, and picked out china patterns. Women with cold feet don't memorize the caterer's emergency contact number." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You've been watching me very carefully, Jake Graymont." "Someone had to." The words came out harsher than I intended. Nathaniel was too busy with his campaign to notice his fiancée was falling apart. The photograph slipped from her fingers, landing face down on the rug. We both stared at it for a moment, neither reaching to pick it up. "Your brother offered me everything I thought I wanted," she said quietly. "Stability. Respectability. A future mapped out in neat little squares like a game board. But I realized I'd rather burn the board than play by its rules." I studied her face, searching for signs of the woman who'd smiled politely through dinner parties and charity galas for the past 2 years. This version of Sophia Martinez was a stranger, dangerous, and unpredictable in ways that made my pulse quicken. "So what now?" I asked. "You disappear? Change your name? Start over in another city?" Maybe." She tilted her head, considering. "Or maybe I will stay and deal with the consequences." The consequences include a very angry Graymont family. My mother spent $30,000 on flowers alone. "Your mother spent $30,000 on her image," Sophia corrected. "The flowers were just decoration." She wasn't wrong. Eleanor Graymont had treated this wedding like a political campaign, complete with strategic guest placement and photo opportunities. Nathaniel's bid for city council had been the unspoken third party in their relationship from the beginning. "You could have called it off privately," I said. "He saved everyone the embarrassment." "Could I?" She pushed herself up from the floor, wobbling slightly. "Your family doesn't do private conversations, Jake. Everything's a negotiation or a press opportunity. Even this." She gestured at the space between us. "Even you being here instead of upstairs with Nathaniel." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you've been looking for an excuse to have this conversation for months." Her dark eyes locked onto mine with uncomfortable intensity. "Don't pretend you haven't." The accusation hit like a physical blow because it was true. I had been watching her, noticing things Nathaniel was too distracted to see. The way she flinched when he talked about their 10-year plan. How she always found reasons to leave the room when he discussed expanding his political career. The careful mask she wore slipped just slightly when she thought no one was looking. "You're drunk," I said. "I'm honest. There's a difference." She moved closer, and I caught the scent of her perfume mixed with bourbon and something else, desperation, maybe, or relief. "The question is whether you're brave enough to be honest too." "About what?" "About why you really came looking for me." I should have given an answer to her, but instead, I found myself studying the curve of her neck where it disappeared beneath the silk of her dress, thinking about all the times I'd watched her across crowded rooms and wondered what would happen if she weren't promised to my brother. Careful, Sophia. You're dancing on dangerous ground." I've been dancing on dangerous ground since the day I met you. She was close enough now that I could see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. The only difference is I'm finally admitting it. The study door opened without warning and we both stepped back like guilty teenagers. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, still wearing his dress shirt and pants but with his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. He looked haggard, older than his 34 years. I thought I heard voices, he said, his gaze moving between us with sharp calculation. Having a nice chat? Nathaniel, Sophia started, but he held up a hand. Save it. I know exactly what this is. His voice was steady, controlled in the way that had won him 3 straight courtroom victories last month. The question is whether you two plan to continue this fascinating conversation somewhere else, or if I need to start making phone calls to damage control specialists. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that my brother has been half in love with my fiancée since Christmas, and she's finally desperate enough to use that to her advantage. Nathaniel stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. Did you really think I didn't notice? Sophia was very still, like prey caught between predators. I notice what? The way Jake always found excuses to visit when I was working late. How you always seemed to need his opinion on wedding details when I was traveling. The careful way you two avoided being alone together until tonight. Nathaniel's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. I may be busy, but I'm not blind. Then why didn't you say anything? I asked. Because I thought she'd make the right choice. He looked directly at Sophia. I thought you understood what you'd be giving up. And what would that be? Her voice was steady now, all traces of vulnerability gone. Security. Position. A future with someone who could actually provide for you instead of someone who spends his trust fund on art galleries and vintage motorcycles. The casual cruelty of it made me flinch, but Sophia just smiled. You're right. I would be giving up a lot. Sophia, I started, but she continued as if I hadn't spoken. I'd be giving up a husband who sees marriage as a political alliance. I'd be giving up dinner parties where I'm introduced as Nathaniel's lovely fiancé instead of by my own name. I'd be giving up a 10-year plan that includes exactly 2 children, spaced 3 years apart, and a colonial house in Westchester with a white picket fence and a golden retriever named something presidential. Nathaniel's composure cracked slightly. I offered you stability. You offered me a cage. She turned to look at me, and I saw something fierce and determined in her expression. The question is whether your brother is offering something different or just a prettier cage. The challenge hung in the air between us like a blade. I could play it safe, apologize to Nathaniel, escort Sophia out the back door and pretend this conversation never happened. It would be the smart thing. The family loyal thing. The thing that wouldn't blow up everything we'd built. Instead, I found myself thinking about all the conversations Sophia and I had shared in stolen moments over the past year. How she'd talked about wanting to travel, to write, to do something meaningful instead of just decorative. How her eyes had lit up when I'd mentioned my plans to expand the gallery, to showcase emerging artists instead of just safe, established names. Maybe the cage isn't the problem, I said slowly. Maybe the problem is settling for safety when you could have something that scares you a little. Nathaniel laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Spoken like someone who's never had to build anything real. You think love conquers all, Jake? You think passion pays the bills? I think passion makes the bills worth paying. How romantic. Nathaniel straightened his cuffs with deliberate precision. Well, you're welcome to find out. Consider this my wedding gift to both of you, each other, and whatever complications come with it. He moved toward the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Just remember, Sophia, when the novelty wears off and you realize that grand gestures don't last forever, that I offered you something sustainable. Something real. This is real, she said quietly. This is rebellion. There's a difference. Nathaniel opened the door, then looked back at me. Take care of her, Jake. She's going to need it when she realizes what she's actually chosen. He left, and the silence that followed felt heavier than anything that had come before. Sophia sank back down onto the rug, suddenly looking exhausted. He's not wrong, you know, she said. About the complications. Probably not. I sat down beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched. Does that scare you? Terrifies me. She leaned into the contact, her head finding my shoulder. But staying scared me more. I want us to figure out what we actually want from each other. Without the wedding planning and family dinners and all the reasons we couldn't say what we were really thinking. I thought about that, about all the careful conversations and stolen glances that had brought us to this moment. And if we decide we want the same thing? Then we'll probably destroy everything and have to build something new from scratch. She tilted her head to look at me. Think you're up for that? Looking down at her, still wearing her wedding dress in my father's study with bourbon on her breath and fire in her eyes, I realized I'd never wanted anything more in my life. Ask me tomorrow, I said. When we're both sober and sure. Fair enough. She settled back against my shoulder. But Jake? Yeah? I'm not going to change my mind about this. About us. Whatever happens next, I'm not running again. Outside, I could hear cars leaving the driveway as our abandoned wedding guests finally gave up and went home. In a few hours, the whole city would be talking about the Graymont wedding that wasn't, and the scandal that was sure to follow. But for now, in the quiet of my father's study with Sophia by my side, the future felt full of dangerous possibilities. And for the first time in months, that didn't scare me at all.